I hope it's working because I had removed it. I'd removed it earlier before they gave us the 15 minutes extra.
نعم الحادي حواري زي ما ذكرت، عدنا مرة تانية أرفع بعض من المكالمات وقبل ما نختم واني مايكل حيجاوب عليه، أرفع 3 4 مكالمات ومنه واني مايكل حيجاوب عليه، لأنه الحول اللي احنا فيه كمان دايرين نستخدموه لأغراض أخرى الاستوديو بتاعنا. ارفع مكالمات. alright شكرا جزيلا الزميل الحادي حواري وشكرا برضو للمستمعين بتاعت اي راديو. We have a few questions. We didn't get the last question from Kasho clearly, but then Turkuk from Northern Bahr al-Ghazal State is talking about the use of resources, and it falls under the four thematic areas we earlier talked about. Wani, he wants you to say something about that, and also he called for he said there is need for comprehensive peace, but then what's your take on elections versus the Tumaini initiative as we speak? Banjan was talking about Tumaini is just like a repeat of agreement. So what are the guarantees that this will really bear fruits? And he talked about the National Dialogue recommendations. One of the recommendations also talked about federalism. So he wants you to have a say on that. But I would like you to go back to David Magog from WOW, who earlier talked about the clean politics and also agreements being violated, and he was referring to the revitalized peace agreement. Wani Michael, you're welcome.
Thank you. I first want to respond to the previous caller from WOW about issues of rights. As the People's Coalition for Civil Actions, the PCCA, we are a non-violent civil rights movement. We subscribe to fundamental freedoms and rights, and we believe that the people of South Sudan ought to enjoy their constitutional rights and freedom and need to be protected by the state. That is why we have not carried guns against the government in Juba, because we believe that the only way to bring a change in South Sudan is through a non-violent means. So I want to assure the caller from WOW that as PCCA, we are rooted in issues of rights and freedoms, and we believe in that. And we want every citizen to enjoy that right. The issues of violation of agreement is one of the key issues that we are discussing in the Tumaini initiative, that we don't need a repeat of the RRCs. We want a process where you have very clear implementation mechanisms, you have very clear implementation instruments, you have very clear implementation modalities. And we had presented very good proposals to the mediator in terms of how do you have an agreement that have very clear implementation. As I mentioned earlier, as PCCA, we believe that you need a constitutional agreement, and a constitutional agreement is absolutely different from the power sharing agreement, because with the constitutional agreement, it leads us into enacting a new constitution. The issues of elections, I mentioned it very clear that as PCCA, we believe that for us to have elections, you first need to meet the prerequisites that are required. One of the key prerequisites is the constitution. You need to have a constitution. You need to have security, stability in the country, because you cannot have election when there are still pockets of violence in the country, when people, even in Juba, are still living in fear. So you needed first to stabilize the security so that you'll be able to go for elections. You cannot also have elections if you don't have the political and civil space open. As I earlier mentioned, for you to have a gathering of 5 people, you still need clearance from the national security. The national security clears gathering, including political gathering.
That's on meetings and events
Yes.
as well. You talked about access and insecurity because on the issue of elections, and you earlier talked about having national conference maybe here in Nairobi, bring people from the states, and then going back to the people. And how will you still have referendum, because it's similar to elections, it involves people?
Yeah, absolutely. That's why we say in the implementation mechanism, we suggested the role of the mediation to be able to be engaged in the implementation mechanism. We don't want the replicate of RGMEC. We wanted something different from RGMEC, because RGMEC only limits itself to report, writing and releasing of reports, but they don't have the instrument to hold the parties accountable to what they have really agreed on. So we also the hosting country, which is the mediating country, Kenya, can be able to engage with the government of South Sudan, who then initiated the process to ensure that when people come for the National Constitutional Conference, they are provided the necessary protection that they really need. By the way, you remember in the National Dialogue, people spoke, because why the political and the civil space was open. And when government came out and said, let people are allowed to speak or say whatsoever they want to speak about. And that's why you could hear people airing out their grievances that they have and how they feel the country really need to move forward. So we believe that for us to have elections and for us to even have a constitutional process in the country, there are key ingredients, or there are key things that the government need to start doing. And one of the things is that you don't need to arrest people because of the way they have expressed themselves. They dissent, you know, in every society or in every country, there are those who agree with the government, and there are those like us who does not agree with the way they are governing the country and the way they are running the country. So we believe as PCCA that there will be no election in 2024 because you don't have the prerequisite that has been met. We don't have a constitution. They're still going to do registration, and you cannot do registration if you don't ascertain the population of the people. So you need census first to understand. So I'm wondering, you're going to register people where? Have you demarcated the polling station that people have to register? So we really believe that the process ought to be transparent, the process ought to be accountable. Most importantly, it must be in accordance with the constitution and the law. And for us, we believe that as PCCA, first meet things, the requirements, security, stability, constitution making process, create a conducive environment for election. Then we shall have a conversation about election. In fact, we want to vote, but you cannot vote in a situation that you are in right now in South Sudan.
And Rajab, Mohandes described it as pregnancy. That's what I can recall in the conversation we had this week. Let's talk about, Turuk talked about the use of resources and need for comprehensive peace. Briefly say something about that.
Yeah, we believe that for many years, our resources have been squandered, and people have embezzled public funds. Others say they have been looting of public funds. So as an institution, we believe that our management of our resources ought to be transparent, ought to be accountable. And we presented very, very tangible recommendations. As I said earlier, all the recommendations of the People's Coalition for Civil Action came from the national dialogue. We are not coming in with the new ideas. We're not coming in with a new proposal. One of the proposals we sort of presented is the control of budget, for example. Because you may agree with me that up to now, civil servants are not paid salary. From the previous budget, 8 months, they have not been paid salary. Now, if you have a government that cannot even pay salaries of civil servants for 8 months, and then you ask, what is their sovereign duty that the government is doing if they cannot be able to meet these basics? So for us, we are saying there must be proper way of controlling our resources. That's why I indicated earlier we are proposing that all resources of the country must be put under one basket, under one account, treasury account. You know, and you need to ensure that the central bank is independent. From what I want to borrow the words of one of the liberators, the General Alewa Yen, who said, commercial bourgeoisies, the people who seems to be holding the economy hostage. So it is important that the accountability institution, like the Auditor General Office, like the Anti-Corruption Commission, like the Central Bank, they need to be independent so that they're able to deliver on the economic reform. Secondly, also the issues of adhering to the budget line, because you find out that some offices or some ministries spend more money than the rest. I listened to iRadio earlier on that Parliament summoned the Honorable Martin Elia to account for $10 million US, which was meant for the implementation of the agreement. So there must be proper accountability mechanism put in place, and that's what we as PCCA we are proposing. For example, as I indicated earlier, we said we needed the Anti-Corruption Commission to have prosecuting power. That once you have been implicated of corruption, they take you direct to court, and the court will deal with you, and you'll be held accountable to that effect. But as the law stands now, the Anti-Corruption Commission has to go to the Ministry of Justice and Constitutional Affairs to get approval, you know, and take the file to the ministry to be able to prosecute. So we need these economic institutions, but most importantly, we feel that the urgent thing that we need to address is to ensure that people are able to afford food, because we understand, as I said, PCCA, we resonate with the people. We understand people are going hungry in a day without meals. So we believe that the first thing to address the situation is to ensure that we provide affordable food for the people by having a very robust policy on how we manage our resources. So some of the proposals we have in the government that they are so far having, we don't agree to them, you know, because we believe that there is need to increase, for example, productivity and production, and there's need to connect to the food baskets, and people should have access to those basic necessities that they need.
Right, and finally, Wani Banjang from POC3 in Juba is asking, is casting doubts, saying what's going to be new in this process. This is like a repetition of agreements and agreements, referring to this Tumaini. So he's looking at the guarantees. That what makes you think, what assurance would you really give to the people back there that this exercise will actually change the situation? But also he mentioned one of the recommendations of the National Dialogue is to have system of federal system of governance in the country. What's your take?
Yeah, the last question about federalism, we also took the recommendation of National Dialogue and presented to the mediation in terms of federalism. And one of the things that we also propose is that let's have a national conference on federalism so that people decide what type of federal system of government we want to undertake. But as an institution, we had already presented what the National Dialogue recommend in terms of federalism. With the question of people losing trust, we understand that there have been a lot of peace processes in South Sudan. But I want to assure the people that we in the PCCA, we understand these issues. That's why we and other stakeholders are advocating for constitutional agreement. And I want to emphasize that for us, we stand for a constitutional agreement as opposed to power sharing. What you had before are power sharing agreements. That's why you see you have 5 vice presidents, 5 of them, you have cabinet, you have huge cabinet, all this. So we are saying we need, for example, a lean government that accommodates the economy that we have at the moment in the country. You cannot have a bloated government, then you don't have the resources. So we believe that the only thing that we can take to our people, which is tangible, is that when we leave the Nairobi process with a protocol on the constitution, that will be the dividend. That's why we say we don't need power sharing agreement. We need a constitutional agreement that addresses the key fundamental issues that affect our people and affect our country. And this is what we stand for. And that is why, by the way, as PCCA, we have and other stakeholders, we presented some of the radical proposals that we feel are the only way can take us out of the system. Because for us, we think you cannot be doing the same thing over time and at the end and you expect different results. So we are thinking outside the box and how we can be able to rescue our people. So we are here to protect the interest of the people, not our own interest. As I said, nobody from the PCCA has any political interest of holding any political office. For us, we believe that we must deliver peace, stability, and constitutionalism to the people of South Sudan.
Right. Wani Michael, thank you for the second time. I hope we'll not come back again from Al-Hadi there. Al-Hadi, that's all from us here from Nairobi, from the ongoing Tumaini initiative. We'll meet again live on The Dawn on Monday, but in the course of the week, over the weekend, we'll also try to update you from our Facebook page and also our YouTube. That's all from me, Emmanuel Joseph Akile, and Lo Nelson from Nairobi. Back to you, Al-Hadi Hawari. ده كله ما عندنا الليلة.